Welcome to We Chat Divorce, hosted by Chellew, legal liaison, and Catherine Shanahan, CDFA. Each episode, we sit down with divorce professionals and industry experts to provide insights and frank discussions about real people, real situations, and real divorce to help you achieve your best life post-divorce. This episode of We Chat Divorce is brought to you by My Divorce Solution, offering divorce financial planning so clients can secure the divorce settlement they deserve. Visit mydivorcesolution.com to request access.
High conflict spouses thrive in chaos. The moment you replace chaos with strategy, the power dynamic shifts very fast. Today, we're diving into the business approach to divorce that protects your assets, your peace, and your future. Welcome back to We Chat Divorce, brought to you by My Divorce Solution. I'm Karen Chellew, legal liaison, helping you navigate the legal complexities of divorce with clarity and confidence.
And I'm Catherine Shanahan, certified divorce financial analyst and your partner in long-term financial security. At MDS, we believe that preparation isn't just about documents and numbers. It's about strategy, mindset, and understanding the full financial impact of your decisions.
So today's conversation is one every woman and or man in a high conflict or high stakes divorce needs to hear.
We're sitting down with Courtney Harkness, a divorce coach, a divorce strategist, and the creator of the Divorce is a Business Deal framework. Courtney is known for helping successful women and a few men protect their peace, their power, and their assets, especially when divorcing narcissistic or a high conflict partner. You know, we say in men, right? Even in our business, and I'm not sure about hers yet, but in our business, we were set out to just help women, right? Remember that? Like 10
Women
years.
helping women.
Women helping women. And then over the year, it was always for the longest time, 70% women, maybe even 80% women for the longest time. And now, I don't know, I would say we're maybe 60-40, 60% women, 40% men.
Yeah.
Because we still have a lot of men who say, you know, your website, when that have gone through our process and love our process, you know, your website still seems fairly women-centric.
Yeah. You know, we had a recent engagement where both spouses hired us, both business owners. And on the launch call, I had not met the male spouse before. And so he comes in, we're talking through all the logistics, what are next steps, everything we do on a launch call. And I could tell he was a little tentative, and we just engaged in the conversation. But at the end of the conversation, he said, before we go, I just want you to know that I was very tentative about this relationship. I was thinking that, the founders are divorced women, so what could I expect? And he said, I am convinced and I appreciate that what you say you do is going to be delivered in my case, just by virtue of this conversation. I see the transparency, the accountability, and we're just going to be clear about our decisions. And he's just said, I appreciate that. And that, just is a testament of who we are and what MDS really is committed to delivering to anyone who hires us.
Yeah, that's so true. And also, if you're listening to this episode, and if she talks mostly about women who are married to narcissist men, we know there are narcissistic women out there. So we'll just hear what she has to say and we'll take it from there.
And if you feel like you're constantly reacting instead of leading your divorce, you'll want to listen closely to what comes next. Courtney, welcome to We Chat Divorce. We are thrilled to have you with us here today. Courtney Harkness is a divorce strategist and certified divorce coach who teaches successful women and a few select men how to treat divorce like a business deal. After co-founding and running a private equity-backed company with her ex-husband, Courtney took her 25 years of business experience and applied it to the divorce world. Today, she empowers clients to make strategic decisions, create leverage, and protect their peace and assets through her signature Divorce is a Business Deal framework. She specializes in high conflict dynamics and helps clients build a comeback story on the other side of divorce. I'm very much looking to our conversation today because you very much align with the My Divorce Solution approach. But let's start at the beginning. What inspired you, Courtney, to take such a unique path from running a company with your ex-husband to becoming a divorce strategist?
It is kind of a winding journey, or it has been. So I've been a corporate executive and business owner for the past 25 years. And several years ago, I went through a high conflict divorce from my ex-husband. We were married for 21 years and we had co-founded a company together in 2016. So we had been running a company together for the better part of 8 years when we decided to split up. And after going through that process, which was, I'm sure you can imagine, financially complex, drawn out, and it was obviously not a fun process to go through, I started to look at the negotiations that we were doing as more of a business deal. So that's not how most people enter into divorce when they're thinking about it because it's so fraught with emotion. So as we got further down this path, I realized, if I can separate the emotional piece from the strategy piece and just look at this like any other business deal I've done. I've closed multi-million-dollar deals with large publicly traded companies. I should be able to handle this. And that was sort of the light bulb moment for me that enabled me to come out on the other side with, my assets protected, but also my peace protected. And it just occurred to me that even with a great divorce attorney, and maybe a great therapist and a great network, I felt like there was a piece missing. So that's why I got certified as a divorce coach. And I describe myself more as a divorce strategist because that's the piece I focus on with my clients. But I like to look at myself as the kind of missing link, the team quarterback, maybe, that a lot of people don't have when they're going through divorce. So that's what inspired me to start this coaching business and to start coaching successful women through divorce.
It's
Yeah.
good because, successful women have a hard time taking a back seat to anyone, right? And so
Right.
they can't put the emotions aside a lot of times because their lot brain is controlling them, but the emotions seep in there. So it's really hard to see it from a different angle.
It's very difficult. And I find the more successful the woman, the more difficult it is, quite frankly, to get them through divorce sometimes because they're used to being a certain way in their professional lives. And I do hear this from quite a few of my clients, though, and successful women I talk to, that they sometimes feel frozen and almost incompetent when it comes to this side of things. And whereas in their work lives, they are superstars, they feel very inept and they feel overwhelmed and frozen. I hear that all the time. They don't even know where to start. They don't know what to do because the emotional piece of it is so heavy. So that's why I focus on initially when I work with clients, I do focus on the emotional piece. And I like to level set and stabilize first because I always say you can't make any business decisions or strategic decisions from a place of emotion. So let's spend the first, 3 or 4 sessions just talking through the emotional piece and getting that kind of under control and giving them specific techniques to handle high conflict partners because I do specialize in high conflict. So all of my clients are dealing with high conflict or narcissistic personalities, no question. So giving them the tools to deal with partners like that helps them get into the mindset of, okay, now I can look at this like a business deal.
Yeah. We've also seen on the flip side, because, we handle the financial piece of the process of getting them organized, getting them financially clear so they can make good decisions. And I also, the flip side where they want to give away everything just to be over with, carry so much guilt. They know they're going to make money moving forward. Everyone thinks men hate paying spousal support, but you should see the women that have to pay. I think they're even angrier.
Right. And what I want, clients to recognize, or what I'm striving to do with them, is I don't want you to be 3 years down the road and turn around and say, I wish I had not done this. And I have heard that from a lot of women who said, I just wanted it to be over with. I gave away XYZ because he's the father of my children and I just wanted it to be done. And I like to remind them, divorce is not a time to be nice and there is no ROI on your kindness. So the other side, if you look at what he or she is doing, they're not trying to be nice. They're protecting their own interests. And that doesn't make you a bad person because you want to protect yourself financially.
Yeah. Well, you could still be nice, but just don't be silly. Don't be
Hmm.
silly about something because, you have
Right.
to realize a few years down the road, life is very different. Not even a few years, 1 year later.
Right. It's an extremely different place. Correct. Yeah. And you can be nice, quote unquote, nice in the way you conduct yourself. And I like to describe it as civil. So we are going to conduct ourselves in a civil manner. We're not getting down into the mud. I never advocate for that. We are going to be calm and clear headed and speak to people in a professional, calm tone, always. But we're not going to be nice in terms of giving away money or assets that we're entitled to keep.
Exactly. I like
Yeah.
that. I can
You
stand
know,
behind that all day long.
yeah, for
Right,
sure.
exactly. Yeah.
Catherine, what do you say? Go ahead and take what's yours or what you negotiate. And if you want to give it back, we'll help
I
you do
always
that.
say, listen,
I love
I'll
that.
help you. I always say, I'll help you write the check to give it back. And in the
Mhm.
last 12 years, not one person asked me to help them write a check to give anything back.
Ever. That is
Ever.
such a great point. I'm going to borrow that if you don't mind. Like, you can always write them a check later next year. If you're feeling guilty,
Yeah.
you can give some of it back. That's such a great point. Yeah.
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 And
I like
another
that.
approach, is before you decide, and sometimes I hear you say, Courtney, people walk in the door and say they've already decided what they believe is the right transaction for their situation. And so we like to say, just hold that thought, put it on pause. Let's get you financially prepared so you know your options and your financial impact, and then decide if that still is your best proposal or if that's still what you want to do. Because we see a lot of people in those situations where, because they're entering the negotiations like that, they want to make everything okay. Everything suffers from that point forward. You get careless in the agreement, you get careless in the transaction. Everybody thinks that we're, getting along, so everything is going to be okay forever and ever and ever. But to your point, get I like what you said, get level set and stabilize. I'd like for you to talk a little bit more about that process. Understand, have really good agreements, and then you can, you're moving forward with clarity, and that transaction holds for a very long time.
Right. That's great advice. I have two primary mantras that I use in my coaching. Number one is your superpower is not reacting. And number two, no sudden moves. And that goes back to what you were just saying. We're not going to jump into anything. We're not going to walk into it thinking, I already know what I'm going to do here. Let's just quickly get it over with. That would not align with my coaching philosophy. So the emotional level set is where I teach your superpower is not reacting. And again, this is advice specific to a high conflict personality and a toxic relationship where, these are not amicable divorces. So let me just be clear about that. This advice pertains to, I work primarily with women. I do have some male clients. I work primarily with women dealing with high conflict partners. So the emotional piece is they are coming out of a marriage that has been an emotional roller coaster. It has been very toxic. They're used to highs and lows. There's all kinds of terrible things that have gone on typically. So they are used to a back and forth with the spouse that's a very emotionally charged. They're used to getting into it with them on a daily basis over text or phone calls or in person or whatever it might be. So I teach your superpower is not reacting, because what a high conflict spouse wants is for you to react. They want to get a rise out of you. They want to trigger you. They just want to stoke the fire. That's entertainment to them. So we're not going to do that anymore. And that is a very difficult actually thing for a lot of women to do, because they feel like, well, but I want to answer him, especially successful career women. He's not right. So I want to prove my point, or I have to answer this. And I teach, we really don't, not everything deserves a response. We look at every single text or email that comes in and say, like, what is the actual question here? What is the actual request here? Is there a legitimate reason for me to engage right now? So I work very closely with them on teaching them exactly what to do. So, I mean, they'll screenshot text and send them to me and say, what do I do? Do I respond to this? Do I not respond to it? Like that. So the emotional piece is not being tied emotionally to that partner anymore. And once they can detach and get that level-headed feeling where they really are calm, then we move into the business piece. Then we start looking at the numbers. So I have three phases that I work through clients. It's stabilize, strategize, execute. So we do the stabilization. We've got your emotional part down. Now we're going into strategize. And that's where we would start working with financial partners and looking at the numbers and really understanding what is it that you own? What is it that you're, looking to do? If you don't have a clear picture of what your financials are, you really can't make any decisions. So that's kind of information gathering and strategizing. What is it you'd like to get out of this? What is your ideal walk away point? What's your ideal scenario as a settlement? What's your worst case scenario? And what's your middle of the road that you would be willing to accept? And then phase 3 is execute. And this is where we're engaging the attorney if they haven't already, or giving the green light to go ahead and, contact the other attorney, or sometimes the green light is to tell their spouse. So I have worked with clients primarily before the spouse knows that they want a divorce. And that, in my opinion, if I can work with clients ahead of time, that's probably the optimal situation, because by the time they get to the part where they're telling the spouse they want a divorce, they've already got all their ducks in a row. And then the other way I work with clients is they've already decided to have a divorce and to get a divorce. And now they're coming to me for, help in strategizing getting the deal done. So either way, yes, getting the emotional piece really under control first, and then looking at it like a business deal. Those are the two primary things I do. That was a very long-winded answer.
Well, it really is in line with what we do. And ideally, I would love for them to come to you first and stabilize, and then we can help with the strategize, please, because
Yes.
we don't tell our clients what to do. Our CDFAs do not invest our clients' money. We have no stake in the game, if you will.
Right.
But
Right.
what we do is make sure they're clear on what their cash flow is, what their needs are, what's their lifestyle analysis, and then we collect what they know about their marital state, whatever documents they can access, and we help them access documents that they don't think that they can access. And then we can go through division scenarios, not telling them what they'll get, but having a clear understanding of what some options are and
Right.
what the impact of those options, so that then they can go execute, as you say.
Yes.
Ideally, we like when people come when they're just thinking divorce, or they're just about to start the process, because it
Right.
does matter how you start. It does matter the pathway that you
Yes.
choose to go down. And I think
Yes.
a lot of times hiring that attorney and executing, again, if you will,
Mhm.
is not the first thing you do. That is not the
No,
first thing you do.
that's a very expensive way to go about getting a divorce, and which is what most people do. You're right. And messy.
It's so messy, right? And then not only that, but you're not what high conflict people forget, or I mean spouses who's dealing with a spouse that's high conflict.
Hmm.
When you trigger the execution before you're prepared, you're just pissing off the other side. And they're
Yes.
just going to make it even messier for you.
It's like launching a grenade. Yeah.
Exactly, with no way to retrieve it. You can't even retrieve it, point, right? So if you go through Courtney's process, if you're listening and you stabilize those emotions and let us get you financially prepared, then they can successfully move on to your next two steps, because then we're out. Like we need to get out, right? We just want to stick in our zone right here. But it really would change how you go through the process and what your net result will be.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a whole master class that I just recorded actually on how to tell your high conflict spouse you want a divorce, because that was coming up so much in my coaching. Like, now it's time to tell them, what do I do? And it's so critical how you approach it and how you tell them. And one of the primary pieces of advice I give is, do not let them know that you have been preparing, because they will immediately see that as betrayal, and you're immediately going to trigger their defensive reaction. And that's, a normal human reaction. If someone came to you and you realized they would be, they were doing something behind your back, you would be defensive too. And with a high conflict person, it's times 1,000. So I really work with them on, this is how you're going to approach it. This is how you tell them. This is when you tell them. These are the words that you use. And this is what you do immediately after, so as to not to trigger that hostile response. So it is really important to set, I think, the right tone. And to go back to, most people run to straight to the attorney, which is understandable. And even I work with a ton of attorneys, and they will all say the same thing. Like, I like it when my clients have worked with you first, because by the time you bring them to me, they're more, I don't want to, maybe credible client is not the right term, but that's how they see them. They're more calm. They're ready to get to work. They're not going to burn through a bunch of time with the emotional phone calls and texts and emails. And even though the attorney, I'm sure, is happy to be, billing for that time, that's really not what they want to be doing. They have plenty of hours they can be billing for legal work. They really don't want to be your divorce coach. So that's why I think having a coach is important, because I'll help you figure out this is when you should call the attorney, and this is when this would not be a good use of your funds to call the attorney right now, you know? So if it's legal advice, yes. I always have a running list with my clients of what they need to be asking the attorney. And I always advise them, like, as we go through sessions, add that to your lawyer list and don't reach out to them until you have a substantial stack of questions that could be handled in a 30-minute or a 1 hour phone call. That's going to save you a lot of time and money versus sending them an email every time you think about something. Let's keep that on our list. Unless it's urgent, we don't go running to the attorney, because that's a very expensive way to handle divorce.
I know we say the same thing. We're reviewing, so I'm going to ask my attorney, and we'll say that's a legal question, but it's not for an everyday send them a question, compile those questions and then ask. Yeah.
Yes, try to maximize the value of your resources, all of your divorce professionals. I really try to help them identify who do you need on your divorce team, why, and when. And so it's like, when are you engaging each professional at which stage of the process, and try to help them maximize the value of their, professional resources.
Mhm.
Courtney, you talked about people getting prepared for divorce. There's also that subset of people who they are in a high conflict divorce, but they don't want to admit it. Both spouses have agreed they want to mediate. We have many of these. Both spouses have agreed they want to mediate. They do hire attorneys because their marital stays fairly complex. But because they're not prepared, as the litigation evolves, the relationship erodes. And what they thought mediation was going to be is not what it is, because no one's prepared. And then litigation ensues because trust erodes, because then the only way they're communicating is through their attorney. I I would guess you have a whole handful or a whole subset of those clients as well. And their, hindsight then to them is, wow, I wish I would have approached the mediation concept a little differently. I wish I would have listened. And I think when you say, that level set and stabilize is getting yourself reset emotionally, that while you want to be collaborative and you want to mediate, you still have to take a position, and you still have to say what you want based on what you know and what your options are.
Right. I say the minute you decide you want a divorce, you have to accept you are no longer on the same team. So there really is no trust. And we need to get rid of that fantasy of the we trust each other. It's just not realistic. So you're no longer on the same team. You have to remember that. You can't show this person all your cards anymore. This is just, it's a very hard truth to accept, especially when you've been married for a very long time. Some of my clients have been married 20, 25, 30 years. And this person is somebody that they went to with every major decision, right? Every time they talk about finances or buying a house or doing something, they would go to the spouse and talk about it. And so this is a very unnatural feeling to kind of keep your cards close to the vest and not tell them what you're thinking. If you go into divorce with a high conflict person expecting them to do the right thing, you're going to be very disappointed. So I think you should assume going into every divorce that you are about to see the worst version of this person. And it's not going to be the person you were married to, or you thought you were, the person who you thought you were married to, because I see that all the time. They get surprised halfway through. I can't believe he did that. I can't believe she did that. Well, I like to say, at the very beginning, get out a piece of paper and write down, no matter how bad things got, my spouse would never fill in the blank. No matter how bad the fighting got or whatever, he would never blank. And whatever you wrote there, he's going to do that and worse. So I normally tell them that up front to try to get them out of exactly what you're talking about, Karen, is let's just go into mediation and it's all going to be fine. It's not a friendly process. I mean, this is, adversarial by its very nature, because there's a pot of money that you have to divide up, and money brings out the worst in people. So when you're fighting over money and kids, those are two very emotionally charged topics. So yeah, you really can't expect any person, but especially not a high conflict person, to play nice with you in the sandbox. So going into it with, we are not on the same team. I have to protect my own interests, and I'm the only one protecting my own interests. That's the best mindset to have.
Yeah.
And it's really not in direct adversity to your spouse. It's in the transaction or the result of the transaction for yourself and your family and the children and whoever else is directly involved.
Mhm. Right. It does not have to be World War III. Again, we don't have to throw the grenade out. We can handle this in a very civil, professional manner. But understanding, that you are the only person that is protecting your own interests, that's a really good mindset to have before you walk into any negotiation. That person sitting across the table from you is hypothetically, figuratively sitting across the table from you is not looking out for your best interests anymore. And it's a hard reality. But once you accept that, it's sort of peaceful because you understand what you have to do.
What's
Um,
even
yeah,
sadder is some people who you think would do the right thing, in your opinion, their attorneys talk them out of it,
right,
because it's
right.
not in their financial best interest and they feel like they have a responsibility to tell them that. But some go a little too far by saying you should never agree to this. Well, it's not up to the attorney to decide either. But so sometimes, even when you think your spouse will do that, they're just not in a position to do it because they let someone else talk for them.
Yes. And I always remind my clients, you are in charge. This is your divorce. You are in charge of this. Of course, having a good attorney is, critical, but they're just giving you advice based on what they know and based on how they know the legal process is going to work. You are in charge of this. So you don't have to do everything that people tell you. Just like if they came to you and you gave them a financial snapshot and said, here are some scenarios that might work, they're free to make their own decisions with that information. So the legal advice is the same thing. You still have to use your critical thinking skills and play it out 3 or 4 moves ahead. What would be likely to happen if I did this? If I took the attorney's advice and took this move or filed this motion, what are the likely next 3 steps that are going to happen? You have to really you're in charge. And I know it's scary and it can feel overwhelming, but you have to be your own boss. You have to be your own decision maker and you have to do what's right for you. And you just can't let other people get you worked up emotionally because it's a high emotion situation. Even if it's your own attorney, you have to really look at everything with a critical eye.
I really like that you say that because I think in large, people get appalled at the legal process itself.
Right.
It takes too long, things don't get done, hearings
Yeah.
are rescheduled, you don't get all the documents you need to make the best decision for yourself, and people feel handcuffed. But to your point, you you have to be able to engage in direct conversations, even with your legal team, with any of your
Hmm.
divorce professionals, in a
Hmm.
way that's getting you to the settlement that you hope to accomplish.
Right. I see both sides of that working. I sometimes see where there is a complete inaction happening and there's no momentum and nothing is moving forward and they're waiting for discovery and filing motions and all of that and it's just dragging out. And then I see the other side of it where the attorney might be more aggressive and is suggesting we do all of these things. Fighting is very expensive. Fighting is the most expensive way you can go about divorce. So every time you make a decision, you need to be looking at how much is this going to cost me and what is the likely result? Is this moving me 1 or 2 steps closer to the finish line, which is a divorce? And I always like to say, too, winning is getting out. So, yes, we're going to look at all the financials, and yes, we're going to make sure that your assets are protected. But sometimes there is a little give and take, and you want to get to the end and you're holding on to sometimes I see people holding on to like one thing that's really not worth very much money. And it's like here's the finish line. Do we want to cross it? Because remember, winning is getting out. And you have to weigh the intangibles of divorce scenarios too. You can't drag it out forever. At some point it's got to end.
Which is hard because a lot of people realize that, they're happy to get out when they have a narcissistic spouse.
Yeah.
But in a way, they also put their head in the sand because you're so trained to respond to this spouse.
Yes.
It took me 2.5 years to basically get over it. You almost
Yeah.
want the interaction in some sick way. You're
You
like,
need it.
you're so, for 23 years, I'm used to responding to someone, fixing the situation. And so when he would fire things out at me, it was so hard to just like bite my tongue because I was so trained to respond to that.
Just go right back.
I
Yeah.
almost needed it myself. Like
Yes. Yes.
until I learned, how to not engage and to back away. I was getting the best result for that. But it took me a long time. So I get it if you're listening and this all sounds so easy to do. It's not easy to do. And a lot of times you have to look in the mirror and say, what am I adding to this? What fuel am I adding to this fire here? Because I need to back out of that too. And that's why I like your first step of the stabilization. Because for us, it is going through the financial piece because you're never getting to execution if you don't understand the financial impact. You don't understand what documentation is missing. You don't understand what documentation you could live without. Or you make decisions now without some of the things so you avoid some rabbit holes. So for us, it's about probably, if I use your terming, stabilizing that piece of it. But it's so, I wish our assessment calls would come to you first for just the stabilization piece, because a lot of them are just so afraid to move forward because they haven't dealt with that piece of the process, and that's not what we do. So, we need someone like you to do that because I think it's so beneficial to them. I really do. I really think that we could change the way people got divorced if the person going through divorce realize that they do have control on how the process can move forward.
Yes, and my goal is for my clients to take their power back. But going back to something you said, I mean, the trauma bond with a narcissistic partner is real. So that feeling, it's almost a physical feeling of like, I have to respond to this. I have to go back and answer this. It's because you're so trauma bonded and you're so used to, there's like a psychological component to it that you sometimes feel like you almost don't even have control over. And that's why working with someone who's going to coach you step by step through, no, okay, I know you feel really compelled to respond to this right now, but let's talk through some ways. We're at least going to wait 24 hours. That's one tip I can give everyone who's listening is anytime you're feeling that and your nervous system gets going and your heart rate's racing, you're like, I've got to respond. I've got to do 24 hours. Unless it involves the health or well-being of your children, 24 hours. There is never a need to respond to anything that quickly.
But we get so many of the my spouse said I have to sign this by tomorrow, or he's going to blow up our whole deal. If it's not signed by end of day tomorrow, he's not giving me anything. I'm not getting anything. And we
I laugh.
have a response. We always say, "Well, send us that. Let's look at it." And
Let's
see.
look at it. Mhm. The world will not end, I promise. And getting really comfortable with a lot of times what's coming out of their mouth is a lie. Okay. And it's hard to just put that blanket category on somebody, but it is helpful. Is this statement truthful? What if he's not telling me the truth? What if what she said is not 100% correct? That's a mindset shift that really can help people like critically looking at everything that comes, every email comes through. So you have until tomorrow, I always like to say, or what? Oh, well, he says this deal's going away. Well, is it in your best interest to sign this deal in the next 24 hours? No, because we're still missing these three pieces. Well, then no, the deal's not getting done. It's a simple answer. But see, I'm more objective, right? I can say, I can look at it with an outside lens and help people do that. When it's your own life, it is very scary and you do get intimidated and you're scared. And I don't want my clients or anyone else making decisions from a place of fear.
Mhm. Amen to that. So it sounds like we could go on and on and on and on forever. You're really saying a lot of things that I resonate with me and for our clientele and how Karen and I feel about the whole divorce process. So I really appreciate the perspective you're bringing. Before Karen shares your information, I want to just point out to everyone, if you're today, what I pulled out of this, I love your stabilize, strategize, and execution. And I know that this is although I don't know when this is being released, I was going to say, I know that getting prepared for divorce is probably one of the scariest things. But if you can really put into your brain, if you're listening, that you need to stabilize those emotions first, and that after that, we can strategize by getting your financial pieces together so that you can execute and not only just execute with a good attorney or mediator, but an attorney and a mediator that fits your needs. And you have to understand that. And then to work with a coach like Courtney is really important because it can help you move through the process. So that was a big takeaway for me. Another one was your level set, and I guess that's part of stabilizing. But level set is such a good word, So if you can write a word down for yourself and you just say level set, everyone can comprehend what that is. Just like level set for yourself, and that's such a peaceful feeling inside. So I think that there's a lot of good takeaways here, and I'm going to add one more. Your superpower is not reacting, and
Yes.
no knee-jerk decisions to anything. Is that what the second one was?
No sudden moves.
No
Yeah.
sudden moves. I love that.
Yeah.
No sudden moves. So really good. I
Right.
could really just pull out a lot of great information here. Thank you for that. And
Yeah, absolutely.
how can our listeners find you?
So I'm on Instagram, divorce.strategy. My website is divorcestrategy.com. So those are the two best ways to reach me and look at some of the resources I have to offer.
I love it.
Yeah.
Divorce is a business deal framework. Very, very
Yes.
good.
Yes. This has
And to
been
our,
so great. Thank you
it
so much
really
for having
is.
me on.
We love to talk to other divorce professionals and who are directly aligned with what we're committed to,
Mhm.
because so many people still a high percentage of people believe if I'm thinking and if I'm going to get divorced, I just go hire an attorney or I just go hire a mediator and that's it. And your family members will say that, your colleagues may say that, but we're here together aligned with a different story based on our own personal experience and
Mhm.
based on our professional experience. And so we really value this conversation, Courtney.
Thank you. I agree. It's so wonderful. I love that the conversation around divorce and the approach around divorce is changing. And I love that there are resources like what you guys have to offer that will help people go through this in a more efficient manner and take that sting out of just like a runaway train with the expensive traditional path of divorce.
For sure. And to our listeners, if you're preparing for divorce or in the middle of a divorce, especially a high conflict one, strategy begins with financial clarity. Visit mydivorcesolution.com to learn how the MDS financial portrait can give you verified numbers, expert analysis, and a clear path or plan for negotiation. And don't forget to join the MDS community, a free supportive space where you can access expert guidance, resources, and live Q&A events with us.
Don't only like, follow, and share this episode. Leave us a comment. We can always have Courtney back on. And until next time, take a breath, protect your peace, and let knowledge be your power.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of We Chat Divorce. We hope this episode was informative and supportive on your divorce journey. If you're looking for more support for navigating divorce with confidence and clarity, head over to mydivorcesolution.com for more podcast episodes, divorce events, and resources for your divorce. We'll see you back here for our next episode.